In 1720, an entire nation watched its wealth vanish almost overnight. Fortunes that had taken generations to build disappeared in weeks. Crowds that once celebrated the rise of a new financial miracle suddenly filled the streets in panic. At the center of it all was a bold financial experiment that promised unlimited wealth from a distant land along the Mississippi River. But the truth was far darker. The financial scheme that was supposed to rescue France from bankruptcy instead created one of the first massive stock market bubbles in history. And when it burst, it nearly destroyed the French economy. This is the story of the Mississippi Bubble, a financial mania so extreme that it transformed ordinary citizens into overnight millionaires before turning them into beggars. And the most disturbing part? The same patterns that created this disaster still appear in modern financial bubbles today. Early 18th century Europe. In 1715, the Kingdom of France was drowning in debt. Years of expensive wars and royal spending under Louis XIV had left the country nearly bankrupt. The government owed enormous amounts of money, the treasury was empty, and public confidence in the financial system had collapsed. France desperately needed a solution. And that solution arrived in the form of a brilliant and controversial Scottish economist named John Law. John Law believed he had discovered the secret to solving economic crises. His idea was revolutionary: create a national bank that issued paper money backed by government debt and use it to stimulate economic growth. At the time, paper money was still a radical concept. But the French government was desperate enough to try anything. So, in 1716, Law founded the Banque Générale, a bank that began issuing paper currency across France. At first, the system worked. Confidence returned. Trade increased. The economy started to recover. But John Law had an even bigger idea. Law believed the real wealth of France wasn't in gold or silver, it was in land and opportunity. And he pointed to one place in particular: the vast territories of Louisiana along the Mississippi River. At the time, these lands were largely unexplored, but rumored to contain unimaginable riches. Gold, silver, fertile farmland, endless natural resources. To exploit this potential, Law created a massive trading corporation known as the Mississippi Company. The company was granted exclusive rights to trade and develop the Louisiana Territory. But instead of funding the company with traditional investors, Law did something radical. He allowed people to buy shares using government debt. This meant that people holding worthless government bonds could exchange them for shares in the Mississippi Company. Suddenly, debt became opportunity. And that opportunity sparked one of the most explosive investment manias in history. By 1719, excitement surrounding the Mississippi Company had reached a fever pitch. Stories spread throughout France about incredible wealth waiting in Louisiana. Investors imagined endless gold mines and profitable trade routes, and the price of Mississippi Company shares began to skyrocket. People from every level of society rushed to buy them: nobles, merchants, shopkeepers, even servants. Crowds gathered daily on the narrow streets of Paris to trade shares. Some investors made fortunes in weeks. Others borrowed huge amounts of money to buy more shares, convinced prices would only continue rising. By early 1720, the value of the Mississippi Company had increased more than 20 times. Paper wealth flooded the economy. Paris became the center of a financial frenzy unlike anything Europe had seen before. But beneath the surface, the entire system rested on a dangerous illusion. The wealth promised by Louisiana did not actually exist, and the financial system supporting the bubble depended on constantly printing more paper money. It was only a matter of time before reality caught up. The collapse began quietly. Some investors started to question whether Louisiana truly contained the riches that had been promised. Others realized that the rapid expansion of paper money was driving inflation. Confidence began to weaken. And once doubt entered the system, panic spread quickly. Investors rushed to sell their shares and convert paper money back into gold. But there was a problem. There wasn't enough gold to cover all the paper currency that had been issued. As more people tried to sell, share prices began to collapse. Within months, the Mississippi Company lost most of its value. The financial miracle that had lifted France out of debt had turned into a catastrophic bubble. By the end of 1720, fortunes across the country had vanished, and the French financial system was left in ruins. The aftermath of the Mississippi bubble was devastating. Thousands of investors were financially destroyed. Many who had borrowed money to buy shares were now buried under debt. Confidence in paper money collapsed across France. Banks failed, markets froze, and the government faced a massive credibility crisis. As for John Law, the man who had once been the most powerful financial figure in France, he was forced to flee the country. Once celebrated as a genius, he became one of the most infamous figures in financial history. In a desperate attempt to stop the collapse, the French government introduced several emergency measures. They tried limiting withdrawals of gold. They attempted to control share prices. They even forced investors to hold on to their stock, but none of these solutions worked. The damage was already done. The bubble had grown too large, and once confidence broke, it was impossible to restore. The financial experiment had failed. What makes the Mississippi bubble so fascinating is how familiar it feels today. The same patterns appear again and again throughout history. Speculative excitement, rising asset prices, easy money, and rapid credit expansion. Then, sudden collapse. From the tulip mania to the dot-com bubble and even the global financial crisis. Different centuries, different technologies, but the same human behavior: greed, fear, and the belief that this time, the boom will never end. If you found this story fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more documentaries exploring the most dramatic financial collapses in history, because understanding these events isn't just about the past. It's about recognizing the warning signs before the next bubble bursts, and history suggests there is always another one forming. This is Neto the Creator. Follow for more.